I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white. They are blessed both day and night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky. Also the faces of people walking by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They often say that I love you. I see babies cry and I watch them grow. They'll learn so much more than I'll never know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky. Also the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? I hear them say that I love you. I see babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn so much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And I think to myself, what a wonderful
To the Bema, Dr. Reverend Keith Cox.
Good morning. Hello, everyone. What a pleasure it is to have Dedrick Bonner back in the house with us, the one, the only. And of course, our co-music director, Yaron Spiwak. It's happy to have him here. Good morning. It feels like spring is in the air, right? Well, I am Reverend Dr. Keith Cox. My title is I'm the spiritual leader here at the Center for Spiritual Living, and it's my honor and my pleasure and my privilege to be with you today as we move along the journey of finding our personal self-empowerment through a spiritual awakening. That's the vision statement that we have here for the Center for Spiritual Living, and we're here to support you in doing that. So I'm knowing for you and affirming for each one of us that this time that we spend together over the next hour, hour and 4 minutes, 6 minutes, might be 54 minutes, you may not know, see how the journey goes, is one that is uplifting and inspiring and gives us the opportunity for self-reflection. So I'd like to invite you, before we move to our next song, to turn your technology devices off unless they are helping you sustain life, meaning ears or heart or lungs. And other than that, let's say hello to those watching online and our live streams. And we're going to welcome and celebrate Dedrick and Yaron again with another song.
Listen to the song here in my heart, a melody I sought but can't complete. Listen to the sound from deep within. It's only beginning to find relief. the time has come for my dreams to be heard. They will not be pushed aside and turned into your own, all 'cause you won't listen. Listen, I am alone at a crossroad. I'm not at home in my own home, and I've tried and tried to say what's on my mind. You should have known. No. Now I'm done believing you. You don't know what I'm feeling. I'm more than what you made of me. I followed the voice you think you gave to me, but now I gotta find my own. You should have listened. There was someone deep inside, someone I thought had died so long ago. Oh, I'm screaming out for my dreams to be heard. They will not be pushed aside or turned into your own, all 'cause you won't listen. Listen, there is a voice deep inside you, 'cause I'm not at home in my own home, and I've tried and tried to say what's on my mind. You should have known. No. Now I'm done believing you. You don't know what I'm feeling. I'm more than what you made of me. I followed the voice you think you gave to me, but now I gotta find my own. I don't know where I belong, but I'll be moving on. If you don't, if you won't, oh, listen to the song here in my heart, a melody I start, but I will complete. Oh, now I'm done believing you. You don't know what I'm feeling. I'm more than what you made of me. I followed the voice you think you gave to me, but now I gotta find my own, my own.
Mr. Dedrick Bonner. I would say that in the end, he found his own voice. Would you agree? I'm not sure your voice has been suppressed that much in life in general. I love that song, and it speaks to the theme for today, which is listening. And the whole arc of that song is really about finding the voice within. And it's identifiable as the individual's voice. In this case, it was Dedrick's voice. In the film, it was Beyonce's voice, of course. But today, the objective is for each one of us to find our own voice in a new way. And the way to do that is indeed by listening. And so as we begin our service this morning and step into a ritual, I would invite you to open your mind to ask yourself, how can you find and use your voice in a new way today? But more than just using your voice, what is it that you're here to hear today? What is it time for in your life to listen to in a new way? And so as we begin to move into this next part of our service, we're going to sing a song and light a candle, which is a ritual for us in doing that. And the last lyric of the song is, "Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me." And so before you and I can really open our mind and our heart and our soul to listening to the voice of the divine, to the voice of life itself, We need to find peace within ourselves so that we can do that. So I'd like to invite to the bema one of our members here and a fine student, Will Giwerts, to come and light our candle. And if you'll look on your handout, you'll see that on the back there is a song called Let There Be Peace on Earth. In metaphysical churches around the U.S., for years, this was a song that everyone ended their service with. And so I think it's better that we open with it and set the stage for peace to be our reality. The acronym that I like to use for peace is Purposeful Energy Activates Conscious Evolution. And so ask yourself, how can you be more purposeful in your energy today to listen in a deeper way than ever before so that the ultimate outcome is you as an individual, or you're evolving in a conscious manner, creating a ripple effect so that the world itself is a better place. Let's begin.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as our Father, united all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be my solemn vow. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow. To take each moment and live each moment with peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
And so as Will lights the candle, the peace candle, I invite you to see the flickering flame, and holding that visual in your mind's eye, begin to close your eyes, turning the vision inward. As we go deeper into our subconscious mind, into our soul, as we feel the energy of peace. Ernest Holmes calls it that state of inner calm. Giving yourself permission to connect to that in a new way. Begin to see yourself as a peaceful being in a greater way than ever before. As you go deeper, calling forth on the voice of the divine to be a guide on this journey of being a conscious evolutionist, a peaceful being, a purposeful light of the divine, navigating life. And we say together, and so it is. Thank you, Will. Thank you. Yeah. So I'm going to begin my message now, and for those of you that are relatively new to this new format that we have, is I'll begin our message, and at the end of the message, we'll have an opportunity for there to be 3 or 4 questions asked or comments made. And so if you're watching online through Facebook Live, know that you're welcome to join in on those questions, and you can actually send those questions in during the feed of the service and just tap that into a message through the CSL Facebook page. I believe we'll do that just fine. So I don't know about you all, but at this stage in my life, I've grown to really hate hearing the word tweet. Anybody else? You're like, oh, Lord. Well, I'm going to address a tweet right now. And it's a tweet not from the person that's becoming most famous for tweeting or twitting. I'm sorry, did I say that? It's from the great Maya Angelou. And believe it or not, she was well known for issuing tweets. And her final tweet before she moved on to the great beyond on May 23rd in the calendar year 2014 is this: listen to yourself, and in that quietude, you might hear the voice of God. I'm going to read that again. Listen to yourself, and in that quietude, you might hear the voice of God. What deep and profound instruction she's giving us there. Now, in our philosophy and faith and way of life, just so we're all clear, the God that we're speaking of is an impersonal power. It doesn't sit in a marble chair in the sky. It doesn't issue demands or declarations or punishments. It's impersonal and it resides within us. It's infinite. It exists throughout the universe. That's what makes it infinite. And it's always there at our beck and call, and we both process it, express it, and experience it through our thoughts and our beliefs and our actions and our reactions and our interactions with life. And so this instruction, this deep and profound instruction that Maya is giving us here, listen to yourself, and in that quietude, you might hear the voice of God, has 2 meanings. One is that the voice of God exists. And the other is it comes through us when we're willing and receptive to hear it and then listen to it. This morning, my message is on listen. The act of listening. Listen is defined as to pay attention to sound, to listen to music, if you will, to hear something with thoughtful attention, to be alert to catch an expected sound. So I'm going to read these again, and I invite you to hear these 3 definitions in the context of what you're listening for in the quietude is the voice of God. To pay attention to sound, that voice of God. To hear something with thoughtful attention, the sound, the voice of God, as you're listening to yourself. And to be alert to catch an expected sound when you listen in quietude to the voice of God as you hear yourself. What I've just shared with you in and of itself alone is a profound spiritual practice. And it's one that I'm encouraging us to open our mind and expand our intentions and our purpose in life as we stay on our journey of finding our personal self-empowerment through a spiritual awakening, to become more cognizant of how we are listening to life, how we are listening in life, and how we are listening as life. And this is especially for the purpose of hearing the voice of God. And it's the 3rd time this morning I've said that we are all on a journey of finding our personal self-empowerment through a spiritual awakening. That is indeed the vision statement for this ministry here known as the Center for Spiritual Living, Los Angeles. But let's break it down. If we're here to find our personal self-empowerment through a spiritual awakening, we're then being informed that what is required to find that empowerment is to have a spiritual awakening. And in this philosophy and faith and way of life known as the science of mind, what we're taught is that not only is the power infinite, But deep within us is peace and power and beauty and joy and light and life and love and wisdom. And that as you and I lean into and surrender to the wisdom of the divine, the intelligence of God that exists within us, and allow it to be the dominant expression that comes through us, and choose to have it as the dominant experience that we have, that we awaken to our own spiritual nature in a new way, and in so doing have been provided through us the opportunity to become more empowered personally. But all of that requires being awake, alert, and engaged to this process. It requires us being not only willing, but intentionally participating in the evolutionary process of our own consciousness. In other words, to commit to being a conscious evolutionist. Well, what is a conscious evolutionist? Well, it's a person, an evolutionist is a person who believes in or supports a theory of evolution, especially in biology. But it's a person who also supports a gradual growth and development. Now, many would say, well, I've been around this teaching for a long time, and we're taught that we can have quantum leaps in consciousness and healing in the twinkling of an eye. And both of those are true. However, for that to transpire, I believe, one must have done the work to build and expand a spiritual musculature, if you will, as Ernest Holmes calls it, the faith of God. In other words, you must know who you are as a divine being without question or without fail. One must show up and live as that divine being without question and or with fail. And one must be willing to give of your innate nature as the universe nature is, which is peace, power, beauty, joy, light, life, love, and wisdom. Not just hold that idea as a philosophy, not just hold that idea as an idea, but to engage in it, to play with it, to use it, to express it, to process life, to perceive life from that lens, that viewpoint. And in so doing, what will transpire is you as a conscious being will evolve into a higher state of mind. 20th century metaphysics calls that. Modern is you'll evolve into a higher framework of consciousness that has a vibration and a frequency to it that will ultimately give you the opportunity to align yourself with your divine nature. Now, in this class that we've all been taking, or that several of us have been taking, based on the map of consciousness according to David Hawkins, the entire focus is how do we evolve in this mystical nature in life in a way so that in fact, we do have the experience of both the spiritual awakening and feeling more personally self-empowered. That's the process of being a conscious evolutionist. The great modern day philosopher and metaphysician Ken Wilber, who is an American writer on transpersonal psychology, and he has his own integral theory, which is a systematic philosophy that suggests that there's a synthesis of all human knowledge and experience. Ernie told us that years ago when he said there was only one mind, everything that ever existed in that mind. It always has, always will, and for you and I to know and express and experience that, we have to use our mind, right? But here's what Ken tells us. He says the understanding of evolutionary consciousness is perhaps the most important thing lacking in spiritual practices today. Evolution means growth and development. This means that there are aspects of reality that have not yet arisen in our consciousness, but they will arise if we grow. What he's telling us is the day has come in modern metaphysics to know that we must be engaged in the development of our consciousness in every facet and dimension and avenue of our life. It's not just enough to know these principles. It's not just enough to know that you are one with and as the divine. It's not just enough to know that your mind has power. That should all be the foundation from which we engage in life. That we consciously commit to doing everything in our power to rise up that evolutionary field in the map of consciousness and do everything in our power to find what Eastern philosophies called enlightenment. In other words, to live as the divine, to walk on water as Jesus did. Not necessarily literally, but metaphorically, meaning that we have the faith of God, as Ernest says, that should we desire to step out onto that which has previously been perceived as impossible to hold us up, that we're willing to test it. In other words, to live, as I talked about 3 weeks ago, on the leading edge of an evolving consciousness. To ask ourselves every single day, how can I think in a more broad manner to really stimulate within myself, what do I believe is my spiritual truth, and what do I believe is the spiritual truth? Well, really, that's what we're doing here at the Center for Spiritual Living Los Angeles in classes and our Sunday services, through the ritual that we do on Sunday morning, through spiritual mind treatment, through meditation, by simply being together. We're coming together intentionally to evolve into a higher vibration, a higher consciousness, if you will, one that aligns with our divine nature. But there's a lot more of that we can do as a group to not only expand it for ourselves, but to expand this community as well. But it's important for us to know to not approach our spiritual evolution from a place of arrogance or ego, because we're not the only ones that have been on a spiritual quest on this planet. Recently, I wrote about it. I'm going to read right now about the concept of the Middle Eastern Sufi practice known as a twirling dervish in traditional terminology, that establishes at its core the concept of attentive spiritual listening, or sama. Now, this spiritual practice involves training the mind to perceive music and movement as manifestations of the divine presence within each one of us. Now, hear that again. That particular spiritual practice involves training the mind to perceive music and movement as manifestations of the divine presence within each of us. Now, how often do I talk about what we are here to do and to be every single day is to become more aware of and live from the divine presence that exists within us. I talk about and instruct us to live from your divinity and let your divinity guide you on the journey of your humanity. But so often we get caught up in letting our humanity, or our ego of our humanity, want to be the driving force, the guide on how we experience life. I mean, just as Dedrick was singing a moment ago, how many of you were judging or concerning or questioning or wondering, or I wish that wasn't so loud, or I wish it had been different, as opposed to just simply surrendering to the experience and trusting that a higher vibrational frequency was unfolding. And that by listening to the pureness of the divine that was transpiring in that moment, because it's there, it's always there, and by opening yourself up to that, you align to it, and in so doing, create an opportunity for yourself, and all of us in your presence, by the way, to rise up in that map of consciousness, to rise to a higher vibrational frequency, ultimately moving us in the direction that we do align with our own divine nature. This article goes on to tell us that this act of courting, if you will, the divine presence, I'm going to back up a second, this process is also known as a pathway to a more awakened conscious spiritual union with the beloved. Now, how many of you in the room feel like you have mastered finding the pathway to a more awakened, conscious, spiritual union with the beloved? What I thought. None of us. Why? Because there is no such thing. One can't master that pathway. One can live in self-mastery around the journey, but you can't master it because its nature is infinite. We're one with its nature, so we're infinite. So the higher that we go in mind, the higher we delve into the vibrational frequency of the infinite nature of mind. You get it? So we can't reach that attainment, if you will, of enlightenment. That's just some level of measurement, if you will, to give us as a goal. But what we're being told here is that not only are we on this pathway to a more awakened, conscious, spiritual union with the beloved, but that people all over the world use organized sound to enhance and even transcend the possibilities of language. And so this act supports the belief that music is a universal language and that we all have the capacity and the ability to connect via the expression of music. What we're being told here is that we have the ability to listen, whether it's as a twirling dervish or not, in a way to have a spark of the transcendent come to life within us. Now, one of the things that I love about the song that Dedrick just sang, and of course I love the Beyonce version too. I even love my version that I do in the shower every now and then. And the lyrics are, listen to the song in my heart. A melody I start but can't complete. Listen to the sound from deep within. It's only beginning to find release. What that's telling us here is that there is deep within us this song, if you will, this vibrational frequency, this resonance field that is the divine. It's that creative power, that infinite nature of life that we are one with. It's waiting, as Dr. David used to talk about when he quoted a Bible, of waiting in smiling repose. In other words, it's sitting there waiting for us to say, come to me. Come to me. The Ricky Byers-Beckwith song says, use me. It says, I'm going to call you and awaken you and then use me. What we're being told in these lyrics is that we're here to listen to that song in our heart. The melody that we can start but can't complete because the sound that is needed to complete it is from deep within us and is just waiting to find release so that it can rise up and give its power to us so that we can then use it as it uses us in a way to rise to that highest vibrational frequency possible. But for you and I to do that, we cannot live the life that we led yesterday. That we must be willing to think, to practice, to move to the leading edge of using our spiritual nature and our contemplative nature in a way to become awakened in a new way. So you may be required to be a whirling dervish occasionally. So stand, Travis, the music. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Did I scare you? No. But I want you to hear what that practice is in a way which might give us an opportunity to start to look at something in a new way. Sufi whirling, if you will, samazan, borrowed from the Persian samazan, is a form of physically active meditation which originated among Sufis and which is still practiced by the Sufi dervishes. Has anyone ever seen them? Anyone witnessed that experience? It's magnificent. It is mesmerizing. It is a customary meditation practice performed within the Sema, a worship ceremony, through which dervishes aim to reach the source of all perfection. So think about it, the whole purpose of spinning in the way that these individuals spin, their whole purpose is to reach the source of all perfection. Not to be perfect, to reach the source of that. And this is sought through abandoning one's ego or personal desires by listening to music, of course, and then focusing on the divine. And spinning one's body in repetitive circles, which has been seen as symbolic imitation of planets in the solar system. The reason I share that with us this morning is imagine what it would be like for this to be your spiritual practice. And I would assume that most of us in the room cannot imagine that. You think you can, but you probably cannot imagine yourself standing up and extending your arms and turning your head to the left. And by listening to music, begin to spin and spin and spin and spin and spin and spin and spin. All for the purpose of anchoring yourself into the rhythm of the universe. Of anchoring yourself into going deeper into your soul to tap into that source of perfection. To do so with a faith of God that it matters not what transpires in the physical world, that you're just going to continue to surrender and surrender and surrender. What each of those dervishes is doing, and what we've all been called to do, and we've spoken about in our recent class, is to consciously commit to courting the presence of God. To consciously commit to court the presence of God. Insomuch that it awakens within us that place where our soul is, and that place within our soul where we know that we know that we know that we know that we are the very presence and the power that exists. But that requires us to be willing to transcend our limiting beliefs. It requires us to look at this whole way of life in a new way. It requires us to believe in a new way that we are the sonship of the only thing that exists, S-O-N-S-H-I-P. This week in our class of Mastering the Mystical Nature of Conscious Evolution, we took a look at igniting the Christ within. Igniting the Christ within, because whether you want to believe it or not, we all have the Christ within. Not Christ as in his surname, Jesus Christ, but Christ as that universal idea of sonship, as Ernest Holmes tells us, which we're each a member. And he goes on to tell us that we each partake of this Christ nature to the degree that the Christ is revealed through us and to the degree that we become the Christ. Now, I don't know if that word has some rub for any of you, but I invite you that if it does, that's the very thing for you to look at right now. And to not look at it from the perspective of any old ideology or what anybody preached to you about Christ, or even being told that you had to believe in that particular person so that you could have some ultimate experience in some destination after you died that's all a load of crap. What we're talking about here is to look at the Christ from a metaphysical perspective. Christ, which is the incarnating principle of the God, of the divine, in the man. In other words, it's the principle of creation. It's how life takes form that exists within you and within me. It is the divine nature that exists within us. Jesus is just the name that represents this individual expression of the Christ idea. But it's important to know that this concept, Christ, existed long before that dude walked this planet. It was the Christ mind in him, however, that exclaimed, "And now, Father, glorify thou me with thine own self, with the glory which I had with thee before the world was." That is the very thing that the Sufi dancers are spinning and spinning and spinning, not just to find, but once they find it, to awaken it within them so that it builds this foundation and these roots, so that each and every time one moves into that mystical dance of a twirling dervish, that foundation is there. That's what you and I are each being called to do in this teaching of moving beyond what we learned in 1960 and 1970 and 1990 and 2010 and last Sunday. To let what we've learned and experiences that we had be the foundation from how we grow, how we choose to grow, but to be willing to look at it from a new perspective and to know that the Christ abides in each and every one of us as potential perfection. Now you notice I didn't say each and every one of us that is here. It resides in each and every one of us as sentient beings. But it's important to know this dude named Jesus, whose last name wasn't Christ, didn't just drop into this world and have those miracles and all that other stuff that was written about. He did his work. He did his work. In the book, The Science of Mind, in the chapter Finding the Christ, it's addressed this way by Ernest Holmes. He says, Jesus, the man, spent much of his time communing with his own soul. For it's through our inner thought that we contact the divine presence. To this remarkable man, out of the silence of his own soul, came a direct revelation of his sonship, his oneness with the divine, and back of the conflict of ideas, back of the din of external life and action, back in the innermost recesses of uplifted thought and silent contemplation, there is a voice ever proclaiming, "This is my beloved Son." Seldom does this voice penetrate the outer world of human experience. Seldom does anyone allow it to be perfectly expressed through them. But we must learn to listen to the voice. We must learn to listen for the voice. And we must learn to listen to the voice. Jesus, the Christ, was an example, not the exception. And in his own day, when he lived and walked Mother Earth, he was a conscious evolutionist, just as you and I are, giving the opportunity to listen and then to go deeper and to listen and then to go deeper and to listen. And then when we hear the voice of God, I know you can't. It's meant to be that way. And then when you can, you go deeper. Because listening is about tuning in to what? To tuning in to that higher frequency that is the voice of the divine. And putting the ego aside. The ego that wants to say, I can't hear, as opposed to just trusting. Because it's in the silence that we have the opportunity to hear. I love poetry by the great 12th century Persian poet Rumi. And he gave us instruction on how to do this. He says, listen, O drop. Give yourself up without regret. And exchange, gain the ocean. Listen, O drop. Bestow upon yourself this honor, and in the arms of the sea, be secure. Who indeed should be so fortunate? An ocean wooing a drop. In God's name, sell and buy at once, give a drop, and take the sea full of pearls. Thank you. And so now is the time, if you'd like to ask questions or make comments. This is it. Wendy. I'm sorry, say that again, please.
I've been in silence. The act of listening has become more and more and more important to me. Not just listening to others, but to have others listen to me. But beyond that, I'm aware of what I'm listening for. And what I'm listening for is, to my awareness today, is authenticity and love. Can you suggest other things that we might be listening for?
Yes. So the statement was that on this, for those watching online, and just if you guys couldn't hear Wendy, she said that on her journey of being in this philosophy and faith and way of life, listening has always been a practice, but more recently, it's become a more aware, an acute practice, if you will. And not only to just listen to what's going on around her, but to listen to others. And that in so doing, what you're listening for is authenticity and love. And the question is, could I give guidance on what else there is to listen for? I have a two-part answer. The one is, the only way that we are going to experience the conscious act of listening, of hearing others, is to make sure that we put out a vibrational frequency to them beforehand, that what they have to say is worthy of our listening. not in a state of judgment, but from a place of emitting love, of the act of namaste, that we approach life and engage in life, that you are my brother, sister, spiritual offspring, if you will. We are one. Therefore, I value you and whatever it is you have to say. Now, that's not always so easy. All right, that's a lofty idea, but you do it one act at a time. And then the second part is, I'll give you my personal experience, is that oftentimes when I find myself not wanting to listen, it's because I'm not living in the present moment. And so I'm learning how to stop. The voice in my head is, shut the hell up and stand still, to me, right? And just be present. And there are times when also, if that's challenging for me, I will be present, but then I'll say to the individual, I have to be very honest with you, I can't listen right now. So I'm not really taking in what you're saying. So can we do this at another time? That's not always met with great receptivity, but I've learned that that's mine to, if I speak my truth, if it's done out of love, that's what I've done. So, anyone else? Yes, Jim Evering.
That quote that's from the Bible. I was raised Catholic, so I know nothing about the Bible.
Uh-huh.
But the one about this happened before I came. Could you repeat that and then expand on it a little bit?
Okay, let's see. So you're asking me about where, when it says, was it with Jesus? I'm not quite sure where it is, Mr. Evering, but let's see. Perspective again on, sorry everyone. Well, it was talking about the Christ, and that Christ, I wonder where it is, hold on. Sorry. No, that's not it. But it's basically talking about the Christ, that the Christ concept, the Christ energy existed before Jesus was anointed it. What it's saying is the purity, because as we talked about in class the other night, the concept of Christ represents the pure potentiality, the pureness, right, and our own divine nature. That's what it is. That's what exists within us. Well, that is part of the divine, right? The divine is infinite. So it clearly existed way before humans came into being, and specifically the human that came here named Jesus, whom many attribute his last name to be Christ, right? But it's not his surname. It was a description of who he was. That help? Great, thank you. Yes, Brenda. I don't know the answer to that question. I am not a library of Rumi, but I do have Google. You're saying that Rumi, or someone of his nature, stated that all talking is talking to oneself. Well, and from a metaphysical perspective, of course, that's true. Yes. Yes, Donald.
Because in this teaching we work from the base of actually treating from instead of to, all due respects to Evangelo, listen to yourself, and you may hear the voice of God. Seems to me to be the wrong preposition. I would think, listen from your true self, you will hear the voice of God. Because what we're trying to do is to get that small stuff of self out of the way in order to direct our thinking from our base, not to
Well, I think you're slicing apples as pears right now, but so what she said is, listen to yourself, and in that quietude, you may hear the voice of God. So I think what she's saying to us, the implication is, listen to yourself. Listen not to yourself, listen to yourself. Go within. And in so doing, if you are receptive in that space, you may hear the voice of God. Not that you may hear the voice of God in that it may or may not exist. You may hear the voice of God because you may or may not be tuned in. Do you guys get the difference? That's the difference there. So thank you. Yeah. Okay. Duly noted. Okay. And hold on just a moment. I'm going to send that to Maya. Okay, she's aware of it too. All right, so so that completes our engagement as the lesson today. So does that help? You guys feel good? Good. So now it's time for us to do our conscious giving. I've littered up here, and I don't like to litter. And so if I could have our ushers come forward, this is the time in our service where we have the opportunity to share of our conscious giving of our financial good to support the ministry known as the Center for Spiritual Living Los Angeles. Also on your handouts, there's a song, the song titles at the bottom of the front page called Love is My Decision. So we're going to sing that as this transpires. The method of giving today that we celebrate is through cash or check or credit card. If you'd like to use cash or check, you can give that to one of our ushers here with the lovely bags they have. If you'd like to use a credit card, you can see our person at the welcome table in the back right now, which I believe is Connie Schneider, our board member on duty today, as well as either in the room or if you're watching online, you can also either send it in via mail at any time. We're here at 1200 North La Brea, Los Angeles, West Hollywood, 1200 North La Brea Avenue, West Hollywood, California, 90038. Or on our website, you can hit the donate button or the app in the App Store, which is CSL-LA. Or is that, did I get that one right? Well, the App Store got it. All right, cool. So please carry us in.
Love is my decision. It's up to me to give of my heart. Love is my decision. No one else can tell me to start. And once I decide to change my mind, Source will show me how. Love is my decision. My decision right here, right now.
Thank you. So I'm going to give a highlight of what's happening here and some thank yous as we wrap up our service, and we have one more song and a meditation. You heard me speak of the class, The Mystical Nature of Conscious Evolution. It's been a fantastic class. We're in class number 5 of 8. You would not have to have attended all of them if you'd like to come. They're Thursday nights here in this room at 7:15 to 9:15. Would love to see all of you here. It's $22, and it's a great way to learn how to use these principles in a different way. I want to remind you that you can get all this information on our website, which is csl-la.org, as well as there's a weekly e-newsletter that goes out on Tuesday. If you haven't received that or you'd like to do so, you can either fill out a form at the welcome table or go to our website, and it immediately pops up and you can tap on the information for that. All this information is on the television in the lobby as well, and as well as on our social media on Facebook and as well on Instagram. I'm going to share with you those that we're in appreciation of today. If we can hold our applause till the end, that would be greatly appreciated on my part. Practitioner du jour is moi. So Connie Schneider is doing our table, our welcome table in the back. Our hound in-house is Cupid. So our illuminator of the day is Will Gewurz. We're happy to have you back today. Thank you, Will. Our board member on duty is Matt Fonda. Sound and setup is Travis Smith and Jesus Ernesto Reyes. Our Facebook Live is Sarah Nurmi and Rob Hensley. And our musicians today are Yaron Spiwak and Dedrick Bonner. Just a reminder that 2 Sundays from now is March 8th. We will not have a service that day because of the LA Marathon. Normally we close down for the LA Marathon. And so one of the things that I love to experience in this teaching is when people learn how to use their mind in a new way to manifest greater good in their life. And we're going to celebrate somebody today who's done that in their life. It's a young lady that some of you may have gotten to know. I've gotten to know her very well. She been working as our office administrator, running our social media and running Facebook Live on Sunday morning. It's Sarah Nurmi, and she is headed off next week, into this week, very soon. The days are being counted by to be in relationship with a gentleman that she's attracted into her life, and they're going to give 3 months in Barcelona to see if it's time for that to happen. And what a great example of using her mind to manifest what was considered a miracle. So actually, you're just like Jesus. So I love that. So we have a little thank you for you. So if we can all take a moment and honor Sarah and send her on her way with much love. So proud of you. And
Thanks, everyone. It's been a great 2.5 years. I really have been using everything I've heard here on Sunday. So it hasn't been just an office job for me, or let me just pop in and pop out. It really, truly has been something I've been using. So I will be watching on Facebook.
And I want to take a moment and introduce you to Rob. Rob, I want to make sure you get your last name right. Hensley. So Rob Hensley is the gentleman I spoke about last Sunday in our interview, who is now stepping into this role. So ladies and gentlemen, meet Rob Hensley, who's here. So there are sweets and tea and coffee in the back for you once service has ended. So please feel free to commune with each other and enjoy that. I'd like to welcome back another sweet gift to us here, Dedrick Bonner and Yaron Spiwak.
Go out and tell our story. Let it echo far and wide. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. How justice was our battle and how justice was denied. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. And say to those who blame us for the way we chose to fight, that sometimes there are battles which are more than black or white. And I could not put down my sword when justice was my right. Make them hear you. Go out and tell our story to your daughters and your sons. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. And tell them in our struggle we were not the only ones. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. Your sword can be a sermon or the power of a pen. Teach every child to raise his voice, and then my brother
Beautiful. And so as we close, I invite you to close your eyes and anchor in the energy of the service that we've shared today. Let's put our mobile devices down. Be a conscious participant of the energy in the room. And as I turned the candle off that was lit earlier, we began to feel that light within that symbolizes ourselves as the drop in the ocean. We begin to see each light within every individual that we encounter in life, using our mind's eye to realize at a deeper level than ever before that not only are we the drop in the ocean, and the ocean the drop is within us, but that's true for all of us, all sentient beings. And it's from this place that we move out into our daily activity and the activities ahead for us this week. Making a covenant and commitment to ourselves to be present. To activate within us an expansive way of listening. Giving permission for that song within. To connect to the source of life for its completion. And so as we go forward in life, today and the next day, we let go of our previous behaviors, forgiving ourselves for all up until this very moment. And let love, the self-givingness of spirit, guide us on this journey. So we bring into our mind's eye our beloved Sarah Nurmi as we commit to buoying her up on this journey of self-discovery with a deep sense of gratitude for the time that we've all shared together. Here we grow again. And coming back together in the room, we let it be as we say together, and so it is. Thank you. Namaste. Have a great day.